Hey folks, see if you've ever had this problem. You're trying to eat a little healthier, but you're in the grocery store aisle, you're looking at packaging, nutrition labels, and they're so confusing, you don't know what's good for you and what's not. Well, this is why I love Thrive Market, my go-to online grocery store for getting all of my healthy essentials delivered, and I don't even have to leave my couch. Finding better options for the whole family is easy with Thrive Market's Healthy Swap Scanner. Just scan a product and it instantly recommends healthier swaps. This is how my wife and I found our new favorite snack, IQ bars. Sometimes I eat one in the morning with my coffee, sometimes just later on in between meals. They also have so many on-site filters that make it simple to shop by the needs of everyone in the family. Maybe you have someone who needs gluten-free food, somebody that has a peanut allergy. Well, no more scouring ingredient labels when you can just filter it all on Thrive Market. My wife and I often use the high protein filter to stock up on things like Sieti chips. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/TCAT for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/TCATT, thrivemarket.com/TCAT. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 374 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Man, I've had a really good week. I was talking about it on Patreon. I got out more this week than I normally do. It was my youngest's birthday.
Yeah.
So we headed down there to go to dinner with her and my oldest. And then I went to a local high school for a leadership series, and they had a really big turnout, and the kids asked great questions, and they were into true crime and podcasting. So it was really cool.
Did you go in there like the dad from Talladega Nights?
No, I did not. But that was funny.
The good thing is, you know, you're here. Like the sun didn't like make you melt or whatever it does to vampires.
It's okay to get out every now and then.
Exactly.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Andy Diamond.
Hey, Andy.
Farrah Brennan.
What's going on, Farrah?
Depressed Goth.
Well, hey, Goth.
Stevie Ups.
What's going on, Stevie?
Or Stevie UPS. It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. Latiana Lillywhite.
Well, thanks, Latiana.
Brenda Pavey.
What's going on, Brenda?
Jody R.
Hey, Jody.
Dory Like the Fish jumped out at her highest level.
Well, I like that fish. Good day.
Wiley Smith.
Hey, Wiley.
Deb Medic.
Hey, there's the medic in the house.
Ashley Barnett.
Hey, Ashley.
Charlotte Upton.
What's going on, Upton?
Mamie M.
Hey, Mamie.
And Ryan Whitecotton jumped out at her highest level.
Well, thank you, White Cotton. Means a lot.
Yeah, so we appreciate that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Rhonda Fritz.
Hey, Rhonda.
So appreciate the new support, the continued support. We also had a Patreon merch winner, and that was Cheryl Ann Reed.
Well, congratulations, Cheryl.
Yeah, for February. So Gibbs, we have an episode out right now on Unsolved where we're talking about Nanette Krentel. And this is a very interesting episode. You know, she was found inside her home after a fire, but they determined that she didn't die from the fire.
Some foul play.
Yeah, she was shot in the head. So, you know, we get into all the details. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
I am ready.
We're talking about Kelly Ellard and Warren Glowatski and the murder of 14-year-old Reena Virk. Reena was a victim of severe bullying. This is a pretty infamous case.
Yes.
From Canada. In November 1997, she was badly beaten by a group of teens who disliked her. Two members of the group, Kelly and Warren, followed Reena after the attack and murdered her. And we have done a number of cases, I don't want to say like this, but that have similar elements. You know, where you're talking about young teenagers murdering another teenager,
Right.
grouping up and not liking someone for whatever reason. The reasons sometimes vary, but the bullying is similar, and it leading to this group think that kind of dovetails into murder. And we never understand it.
No, it always disturbs me. Everything disturbs me. This just really pulls at me for some reason. I just can't figure it out. Like, why?
Well,
Why?
I think part of the reason is all of us at one point were, 14, 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
So you think back to that time in your life. Were there people you didn't like? Obviously there were. Did you get into fights, scraps?
Yeah.
Sure. Did you ever sit around with your friends and say, you know what, we should kill this person? No. And so it just, most of us can't understand how the group dynamic can get to the point where, it leads to something like this.
And you would just think that out of the group, at least somebody in that group would be like, the bulb would go off, right? The light bulb goes ding, and they go, oh, yeah, we probably shouldn't be doing this. Hey, guys, let's,
Well, and sometimes it does, but that just means maybe they remove themselves, and it doesn't stop the entire thing. Reena Virk was born on March 10th, 1983 in British Columbia, Canada. She lived in View Royal, a middle-class suburb of Victoria. Reena's mother, Suman, was born in Canada, and her father, Manjit, immigrated from India. Reena sometimes felt like an outsider in her community because of her family's religious beliefs. Her parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, and Reena rebelled against the strict rules her parents imposed on her.
Most kids do rebel against strict parenting in one way or the other.
It's kind of in a kid's nature to rebel.
Sure.
It's kind of part of being a kid.
That's pretty much your whole childhood right there, rebelling.
In 1996, Reena falsely accused her father of sexually assaulting her. She was removed from her parents' home and placed in her grandparents' care. She was eventually transferred to a foster home.
That's got to be hard to recover from, to be accused falsely of something.
Well, not just something, of sexually assaulting your own daughter.
Yeah.
That's got to be very, very rough, because not only are you going to have to deal with people thinking you did that,
Sure.
but now you've also kind of lost your daughter.
Yeah. And even when it would come out that it was false, everybody sees the first headline.
Sure.
A lot of times they don't see the follow-up headline where it says, oh, by the way, what was said in the first headline wasn't true, and just forget about that.
Or the conversation over the fence, right, is, did you hear what so-and-so did? There might not be a follow-up conversation that says, oh, by the way, it turns out he didn't do that.
Exactly.
So, that would be rough. Over the next few months, Reena moved between her parents' home, foster care, and youth shelters. In his 2008 book, Reena, A Father Story, Manjit wrote, I now believe Reena manipulated social workers and family alike. It was killing me that no one believed us, and everyone seemed to accept Reena's stories. Now, this is a very tough situation, because what do we always talk about? It's pretty tough not to believe someone when they come forward and say, I was sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person who doesn't believe that.
No, I don't think you can discount it. I think you have to hear it, do what you can to vet it, but that could be difficult, I would think.
To prove?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So no doubt there was trouble at home, but in addition to that, Reena was also bullied by her peers. Her friends said she struggled with self-esteem issues due to her weight. At one point, Reena was living in a group home with other teens, and she wanted to be accepted by them.
Well, we all want that, right?
Who doesn't want to be accepted? That's kind of a universal thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's even more universal when you're of that age. You crave it. You need it.
You do.
In late 1997, Reena was accused of spreading rumors about another girl and trying to steal that girl's boyfriend. Reena was murdered on November 14th, 1997. That night, she joined a group of teenagers who were gathering on a field behind Shoreline School in View Royal. The police broke up the gathering, so the group moved to a spot under the Craigflower Bridge in Sandwich. We've all been there, right? You put something together, everybody's going to meet up someplace. Well, it gets broken up.
Sure.
And so either the whole group moves somewhere else, or more likely kind of splinters, and you have all these different groups going other places. But what happened was a fight broke out under the bridge. And the girl who believed Reena was spreading rumors about her put out a cigarette on Reena's forehead.
Okay. Not good.
No, I'm sure that is extremely painful. Reena was then swarmed by a group of 7 teens, most of them girls, and badly beaten. The teens punched and kicked her. Reena cried out, "I'm sorry," and laid on the ground. Some of the teens who were present left, but some watched the assault. Once it was over, Reena was able to get up and started walking across the bridge to get away. So, this kind of goes back to what you were talking about. Who's going to make that decision that this is not right? I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want anything to do with it. Well, it sounds like some of the teens who were there did. They didn't participate. They left. Some didn't participate, but they watched.
Yeah, we know there's a lot of people that like to watch things happening.
And then others, as we'll talk about, participated. But it sounds like at this point, obviously what happened wasn't good, but Reena was alive. Sure, she was hurt, but she was, getting away from this situation.
Yeah.
And most likely, she would have recovered. 15-year-old Kelly Ellard and 16-year-old Warren Glowatski followed Reena, and they continued beating her. They both punched and kicked her. Kelly smashed Reena's head into a tree, which caused her to lose consciousness. Kelly then dragged her to the nearby gorge waterway. She held Reena's head under the water until she drowned.
I just can't get my head wrapped around that,
Yeah, 2 teenagers, 15 and 16 years old. And it sounds like, from that part, the 15-year-old Kelly, she was at least at the end doing the most of the damage.
Yeah.
And ultimately ended up killing.
How much anger must be festered up inside you?
Over what, though?
Yeah, I mean, that you have to go to this extreme. Like, not that it's okay, but what happened to the days of, if you have a little scrap, you fight, you win or lose, draw, whatever, and you walk away. These kids taking it to this next level, it's tough. It's tough.
Well, and to your point, I think one of the problems I have here is that it sounds like they had already inflicted quite a bit of damage on Reena. But even that wasn't good enough for them.
Right.
They couldn't just leave it at that. They had to follow her, continue to beat her, and then, ultimately hold her head under water. The 2 teens left Reena's body and went home. Reena's parents reported her missing. Warren Glowatski was arrested on November 21st, 1997, after an officer overheard his admission, according to the CBC. Police divers found Reena's body in a shallow tidal pool on November 22nd, 1997. She was found just about a kilometer from where she was beaten. So in all, 17 girls were charged for their role in the assault and murder, including Kelly Ellard. 6 of them were not identified because they're protected by the Youth Criminal Justice Act. Both Warren and Kelly were charged with second-degree murder, and a judge ruled that they would be tried in adult court. And I know that's always controversial.
Yeah.
This kind of idea that a 15, 16-year-old would be tried as an adult. And I'm sure it's never an easy decision for a judge to make.
But when you have two teens, 15, 16, that decide to act like an adult by doing an adult crime.
In such a heinous way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure it played a big factor into the judge making that determination.
And you would think at that age, they should have known better.
Known that what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. According to the Canadian Encyclopedia, Warren's mother was an alcoholic and was absent for most of his life. At the time of the murder, he was living at a friend's house because his father moved to California without taking him with him. Okay, doesn't sound like he had the greatest childhood.
No, definitely not Leave It to Beaver.
No, I know it obviously is not that. Your mom's not around for most of your life. Your dad decides to move to California and says, you know what? I'm going without you. I'm not even taking you with me.
Good luck to you.
Kelly came from a more stable home environment and had family support. The 6 teens who were charged as juveniles were convicted and sentenced in 1998. The first court proceedings occurred on February 9th of that year. 3 teen girls pleaded guilty to assault, causing bodily harm. Days later, 3 more teen girls went to trial for aggravated assault and were convicted of a lesser charge of assault causing bodily harm. They received sentences ranging from 60 days to 1 year in jail.
Well, not knowing what their participation level was, but it sounds like maybe it was fair.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not jumping up and down here and saying, oh my gosh, they got off scot-free, because number one, we don't know their names. Right. There's not a lot of detail out there about them because of the disclosure laws in Canada. But if you spend a year in jail, okay, that means one of them probably participated more than the others.
Right.
And that's no joke as a teenager to spend a year in jail.
Yeah. As a juvenile to spend a year, hopefully it made you see the light and change your attitude. Did you ever get an attitude adjustment by your parents when you were younger?
I've had a number of attitude adjustments. Not for a very, very long time. Not since I haven't had any as an adult that I can remember.
I hope not.
I'd like to say I haven't given any, but that would be a lie.
Yeah, if you've gotten it, it'd be a little strange. Giving it, that's different.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, my stepfather was a kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he didn't put up with, let's say, any tomfoolery.
Yeah.
And he wasn't afraid to
adjust your attitude.
Adjust an attitude when it was needed. But, ultimately it was really good for me.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't like it then, but looking back, it kind of made me part of who I am.
It molded you.
Yeah, it did. So when we talk about Warren Glowatski's murder trial started on April 12th, 1999. Warren was a juvenile at the time of the murder. We said he was 16 years old. Some sources said he was 17. There was a lot of inconsistency around that, but he was definitely a juvenile. Before trial, the judge ruled against a publication ban, which I think is very normal in cases involving juveniles, especially in Canada. They're very quick to not allow information out.
Yeah, they like to shield.
Much more so than here in the U.S. But even in the United States, you might not see something about a juvenile. Both the prosecution and the defense wanted a publication ban for Warren's trial because they were worried it would influence Kelly's upcoming trial.
I didn't think about it that way from the prosecutor side.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about it in that way. We're so used to getting information just shoved at us left and right. I don't know how in some of these big trials, someone can go on the jury and say that they've never heard about it. Pretty tough nowadays.
I think.
With the amount of news that is circling around nonstop. The public didn't know many details, though, by this point. Interviews with some of the teens involved were published in an American magazine, but the article was not distributed in British Columbia. On May 3rd, Warren Glowatski testified in his own defense and admitted that he participated in the beating, but insisted that he did not kill Reena.
Well, why would he admit that he killed her at this point? He's going to trial. He doesn't want to admit that he did anything.
And from what we know so far, what we've told, he wasn't the one who held Reena underwater and drowned her. That was Kelly. Warren testified that Reena was swarmed by a group of girls while they were hanging out under a bridge. He claimed this was the first time he'd ever seen Reena. He joined the group and kicked her in the head. He couldn't explain why he did it or why he and Kelly followed her after the attack. He testified that they caught up to Reena in a dark area of a park. He and Kelly punched and kicked her and grabbed her hair and hit her head against a tree, which stunned her. Warren grabbed her by one leg and dragged her down to the water. He testified that he told Kelly to leave Reena alone. When she did not, he left and stopped to vomit as he went home. Warren said he should have done more to stop the beating.
Should have done more to stop? Didn't he do enough?
As a participant?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what he's saying. He's not incorrect, but it's kind of hollow when you say that after admitting that, you did all of these really brutal things.
Yeah, I mean,
to Reena.
You just bounced her head off a tree, then grabbed her and dragged her down to the river's edge.
Kicked her in the head at one point. But yeah, he's not wrong. He should have done more to stop the beating. But that seems like something a person would say if they were just a bystander.
Yeah.
And didn't participate in the beating in any way. And obviously that wasn't him. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. Once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like their 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. Prosecutors told the court that Warren joked about Reena with his friends and later told people he played a role in the murder. They argued he was making up a story to cover up his role in the murder.
Well, we know some kids, some people in general. They like to brag about the bad things they do or have done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, does it seem like, a 16-year-old would even be more likely? They're around their friends all day at school. Word of this has gotten around. It's going to fly around the school. And so people are going to be talking about it. And he's bragging about his role in it.
But is this the kind of stuff you really want to be known for?
No,
I don't think so. But, maybe he thought this makes me tougher.
Right. Or I get some cool points.
Yeah.
We don't know, what's going on in the minds of these kids. But I can see a pretty tough role for the court, right? What's true, what's not true, what parts of Warren's story are real, what's he fabricating or what's he omitting about his role. On May 13th, 1999, in the middle of Warren's trial, the Supreme Court of Canada refused to hear an appeal by Kelly Ellard's lawyer to have her case tried in youth court. And they had to have been pushing for that very hard.
Oh, absolutely.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Warren Glowatski was convicted of second-degree murder on June 2nd, 1999. On June 18th, he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 7 years. The judge felt that he would have a better chance of participating in prison programs and getting an education at a federal institution than a youth facility.
You get a life sentence here in the States with a parole term. I don't think you're going to find it at 7.
No, I don't think I've ever heard of a life sentence with no chance of parole for 7 years. Here in the United States, it's often a much longer period of time. But we know Canada and the U.S. differ in a lot of ways, especially in the judicial system. I did think it was interesting that, the judge said, I think you'll get a better education at the big boy prison.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Warren was like, you know what? I'll take my chances at the youth facility.
Yeah, please let me go to the youth place. Yeah.
But he didn't have a choice. Kelly Ellard's trial started on March 9th, 2000. Prosecutors portrayed Kelly as the most aggressive out of the group, while the defense argued she was a victim of a conspiracy by a group of girls who wanted to protect themselves. The prosecution told the jury they would hear from witnesses who would testify that Kelly talked about how she held Reena's head underwater and drowned her, and that she seemed happy and proud of what she did.
I'm sure that won't play well in the court.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's one thing to do the act, and then it's a separate thing to then brag about it and be happy about it and be proud about it.
Yeah. Well, that just adds an extra layer
on top of the evil act. Yeah, I think it does. But you can see what the defense is going to try to do, right? Kelly didn't do all of this. There's a bunch of other girls who are trying to, cover their behinds, and they're laying it all on Kelly. That's what the defense is going to argue. One unidentified girl testified that a group of 8 teens swarmed Reena under the bridge. One girl put out her cigarette on Reena's forehead, and Reena was kicked and punched until the witness and another friend yelled at everyone to stop. The witness admitted to kicking Reena twice. She testified that her friends were angry with Reena for lying about boyfriends and sex, according to CBC. So I think this goes back to what we said. Spreading rumors was kind of an underlying factor. Stealing boyfriends, reasons behind why some of these girls were upset with her. That's what it was talked about.
At least when I went to high school, most of the fights were over either a girl, or if the girls were fighting, it was over
a boy.
Yep. Sometimes they got some pretty dirty fight going on there.
Well, because it's jealousy.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why we cover murders. I mean, how many murders happen over jealousy?
Yeah.
A lot. The witness admitted that after the beating, she and a friend stole items from Reena's purse. She testified that Kelly called her the following day and described the murder. So, I mean, it's tough as a defendant to have witnesses like this who not only are putting themselves at the scene, but they're also admitting to a role in what happened. But at the same time, they're saying, but Kelly was the murderer. I do like the fact that the witness added in, but you know what? I told everyone to stop.
Yeah. I said, hey, we got to stop this. Let's move it on now.
Whether it's true or not, that might be true. She may have done that, or that might be a way to soften her look a little after admitting to, kicking Reena twice and taking stuff out of her purse. Witness Lorne Lloyd Walters saw the beating and saw Kelly drag Reena down some stairs. He saw her prop Reena up against a rock wall and punch her in the face repeatedly. When he asked her a few days later what happened to Reena, Kelly said per CBC, I finished her off.
Kelly sounds brutal.
Yeah. And this was a very brutal incident, even before the murder. You think about being held up against a rock wall and punched in the face repeatedly. And I think you're absolutely right. This was a very brutal 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, with a lot of anger.
And then, when somebody tells you, I finished someone off, well, how are you going to take that?
The only way that you can, I think, right? You finished her off.
In this context, I killed her.
Especially, later when you find out what happened to her, you're like, wow, she killed her. She killed her.
Kelly's stepmother testified that she came home at 11 p.m. on the night of the murder, changed clothes, and came back out to say goodnight. She didn't seem drunk or flustered. She asked Kelly what she did that night, and Kelly said she hung out with friends. And this kind of blew me away because I'm thinking, how do you kind of switch that off? Right? This is a girl who held another girl up against the wall, punched her face repeatedly, kicked her in the head, ultimately drowned her, and then goes home and just says, hey, everything's great. I hung out with some friends. No problem. Doesn't seem
rattled at all.
Rattled. How? You and I are rattled just talking about it.
Yeah, it's alarming.
Another witness testified that she met Warren Glowatski in a youth detention center. She claimed he offered her $3,000 to pin the crime on Kelly, but she refused. The prosecution asked where he would have gotten the money. She said Warren told her he was in a gang and they would provide the money. An 18-year-old girl who was earlier convicted of beating Reena testified that she saw Kelly punch Reena and yank her hair. She also saw Kelly and Warren cross the bridge after the attack. Kelly later called her and told her what she did. Kelly was calm as she described the attack and even seemed happy and proud. Again, that comes back around. Calm, happy, proud. Not adjectives that you would think of someone as being after they had viciously beaten and murdered someone.
No regret, no remorse.
Kelly got on the stand and testified that she tried to stop other girls from continuing the attack. She claimed she asked Reena if she was all right. Now, she admitted to punching Reena, but maintained that she didn't kill her. She said she had no reason to be angry with Reena because she had just met her. Kelly testified that she was standing under the bridge when a fight broke out. She heard a gasp and saw Reena coming at her friend. She punched Reena in the jaw, and Reena was swarmed seconds later. Kelly stopped hitting her when someone yelled that she'd had enough. So both Warren and Kelly testified that they didn't know Reena at all.
Yeah.
Like this was the first time they had even met her.
Well, if you don't know the person, why are you participating in this brutal beating?
Well, I think that's where the differences in testimony come in, right? So Kelly says, I hit her, but it was because she came after one of my friends. So that's how, she's kind of crafting the narrative of her involvement.
Kind of justifying it.
Almost like she was protecting.
Yeah.
her friend, and then she stopped when someone yelled that was enough. Kelly claimed that the last time she saw Reena was when she was struggling to walk across a bridge. She allegedly saw 3 other people following her. Well, what else is she going to say? Right? She is not going to say, yes, I followed her. Yes, I held her head underwater until she was dead. Very few defendants make those kind of incriminating statements. What they do is more like admit parts of what they did.
Yeah.
And then maybe put a little something in there that softens even the lesser parts and totally omit the really, really bad parts.
Yeah, they want to try to deflect those parts.
The prosecutor asked Kelly to explain why so many people said it was her who crossed the bridge. Kelly responded, I don't know. So again, I think if you're the jury, if you're the court, you have to either believe Kelly, who's saying she never even crossed the bridge after Reena, or you believe all these other people who have already been convicted and are saying, we saw Kelly cross the bridge. And some people are saying that she even called after the fact and told them exactly what happened. On March 31st, 2000, Kelly Ellard was convicted of second-degree murder. On April 21st, she was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 5 years. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, she got 2 years less on the parole possibility.
Now, she was a year or two younger than Warren, but from all the evidence that seems to have come out, she was the one who in the end actually took Reena's life.
Yeah.
But it's a different court. It's a different judge. So
different outcome.
On November 15th, 2000, Reena's parents sued the teens who were charged with attacking her. The government of British Columbia and other defendants. Reena Virk said about the lawsuit, as quoted by CBC, society doesn't make people take responsibility for their actions. This is one way to make them responsible. And I think a lot of people look at these lawsuits as, well, they're after money. And some people are, but in a way, he is right. What other recourse does he have to try to hold people accountable other than going after their money?
Yeah, I agree with him.
On November 29th, 2001, the British Columbia Court of Appeal rejected Warren Glowatski's petition. The court found that he actively participated in the murder. In a surprising decision, the BC Court of Appeal ordered a new trial for Kelly Ellard. On February 4th, 2003, the court found that the prosecution failed to give her a fair trial by asking her 18 times why witnesses would give false testimony against her.
I'm trying to figure out why that
would result in an unfair trial.
Yeah.
Does seem like a lot of times, but you're right. I'm not sure why that would mean the trial wasn't fair. Kelly lived in a halfway house while she awaited trial. On March 4th, 2004, her bail was revoked after she was charged with assault causing bodily harm. Kelly and another woman were drinking at a park and invited a 58-year-old woman to join them. When they couldn't find their cell phone, they accused the woman of stealing it. They punched her in the face until she broke free and called 911.
Well, this is not going to help your current trial situation.
No, not at all. And how many times have you and I talked about this? If you're given even the hint of a second chance, which she has been, she's getting a new trial, don't you think you would be on your very best behavior?
Absolutely.
You don't go out drinking at the park and then punch a woman in the face because you think she took your cell phone.
Yeah.
You think that's not going to come up at trial? Now there's just new ammunition.
Absolutely it is.
Kelly's second trial started on June 14th, 2004. Her defense suggested that Warren was the one who killed Reena, but several witnesses testified that Kelly admitted to the murder, and they did in the first trial as well. One unidentified young woman testified that she knew Kelly participated in the initial beating. The next day, Kelly told her she followed Reena, smashed her head into a tree, dragged her to the water, and held her down until she stopped moving. A week later, she said she was happy about what she did. So that has come up a number of times from different people. So what does that mean? Either she really told a number of people this same thing, or there's a huge conspiracy.
Exactly.
Where all these people got together and said, we're all going to say this about Kelly.
Yeah, let's take Kelly down.
The court heard a recording of a deceased witness who testified that she heard Kelly say she was going after Reena and saw her follow her across the bridge. Kelly told this girl she broke Reena's arms and legs before she killed her. According to CBC, the witness claimed Kelly said, I felt I had to go back and finish everything. Otherwise, she would rat everyone out.
And we've heard that in similar cases, that they felt like they had to finish off what they started because they were worried that the victim would go to the police.
And I do think that happens a lot. 20-year-old Laura Taylor testified that she was an acquaintance of Kelly on the night of the murder. Laura ran into some teenagers who bragged about beating Reena earlier in the evening. People were also discussing what happened at school on Monday. She was about a foot away from Kelly when she heard her tell another person she and Warren Glowatski went back to attack Reena. She said she stomped on Reena's face and used her foot to hold her underwater while she smoked. Now, obviously, some of these people are 20 years old, but it's because it's taken so long, right, to get to this point. Back then, they were probably 15 or 16.
Look, it could be a big conspiracy against Kelly, but at this point, these individuals are, like you said, 20 years old. Why would they lie on the stand? They're going to say what they heard. I just don't see why would they put themselves at jeopardy by making something up.
No, I get that. And then you also have the fact that some of these girls were already convicted. By this time had already served their time. What would be their reasoning for needing to lie? 20-year-old Candace Tanner testified that she ran into Kelly on the evening of the murder and asked her why she was wet. Kelly said she'd been in the water, and Candace asked her why. As quoted by CBC, Kelly said she was in the water and didn't come back up. Witness Jodine Rogers testified that Kelly joked about forgetting to take her foot off Reena's head while she held her underwater for 2 to 3 minutes. Witness Chandel Naismith testified that Kelly took her to the crime scene 5 days after the attack when Reena was still considered a missing person and described what she did in detail. So, I think you have to look at all of this. This is not one or two individuals.
Right.
This is a lot of different people who are saying, she told me what she did. We saw her cross the bridge. She described, all these different details. So
she was wet.
She was wet. So again, either all of these people conspired together or these things really happened. And what is most likely to be believed? That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
For a court, a jury. At this trial, Warren Glowatski testified that he watched Kelly drown Reena. At her trial in 2000, he testified that he left before the drowning after he told Kelly to leave Reena alone. And this is a problem, right? Changing testimony, changing statements. It's something that Kelly's defense team is going to jump on, and they did.
Especially that it's coming from Warren, right? The other person implicated in this homicide.
And deflect from, it being him. Kelly's defense attorney noted that Warren had previously lied in police statements and under oath. Warren explained that at the time, he would have said anything to stay out of jail, but insisted he was telling the truth now.
But for me, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would you now say you saw her holding the head underneath water, but years previously you said you just walked away? Wouldn't it help your case if you would have said that in the beginning?
Well, maybe his thinking was that it would be worse for him if he admitted to even being there at the time of the murder. And I could see some validity in that. I also believe that it is true, right? Most people will say just about anything to avoid jail.
I agree.
Now, does it mean he's telling the truth now? No. And you can see why the defense would really point it out and try to undermine him. A pathologist testified that Reena's cause of death was drowning, but she most likely would not have survived her head injuries. Reena had an imprint of a running shoe on her head, consistent with stomping or, some type of kick. There were pebbles in her throat, consistent with someone drowning face down in shallow water. And this is horrible to talk about. It's horrible to think about.
It really is.
What this 14-year-old girl went through that night. Imagine being ganged up on, having a cigarette put out on you, being helpless while you're stomped, kicked, punched. And then almost as if you're trying to recover from that initial beating, two people catch up to you and there's another beating.
Yeah.
This time, maybe even more severe. There's more kicking, there's more punching, and then you're ultimately held underwater until you can't breathe anymore. The pathologist testified that Reena could have sustained such severe injuries during the initial beating and then walked across the bridge. At some point, though, she would have been unconscious or in so much pain that she wouldn't have been able to move.
And that's why they had to drag her down to the water.
I think that's what, this person is getting at. On July 6th, Kelly admitted to punching Reena, but said she did so because she thought Reena was going to hurt one of her friends. And this is the same thing she said in the first trial. And also, again, she said she never crossed the bridge, according to CBC. And that's very important, right? For her to say, I never crossed the bridge. Because if she doesn't cross the bridge, then how can she be the killer?
Right. She can't be at the murder site.
Right. She said she sat at a bus stop and saw Reena cross the bridge. Warren showed up 10 minutes later and appeared agitated. He said he and two other girls followed Reena and beat her. He left while the girls were still fighting with her in the water.
Well, if that's the case, why would Kelly brag about being over there on the other side of the bridge, beating her, and then eventually killing her to people the next day and the next week?
Because now she's fighting for her life.
Yeah.
You're going to pull out all the stops. You're going to say whatever you have to say. You have to put up a fight, right? You have to put up a defense. The prosecutor suggested that Kelly helped with the plan to lure Reena under the bridge to settle a score between Reena and two other girls. Kelly became frustrated during cross-examination and said, I am not a monster. At one point, Kelly said, as reported by CBC, I'm obviously going to be convicted. You've got what you want. My life is ruined.
Well, if you did what everyone believes you did.
Number one, you are a monster.
Absolutely.
And number two, your life is going to be ruined. I just think it's probably a bad choice to admit the fact that you're probably going to be, that you're obviously going to be convicted while the trial is still going on.
Yeah.
Probably not the best course of action.
You're kind of like saying, hey, it's okay. I know you're going to do it. Just go ahead and do it.
The jury began deliberations on July 14th, 2004. On July 18th, the judge declared a mistrial after the jury announced they were deadlocked.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. Don't have all the details, but you'd love to have been in that jury room just to find out what they were having a problem with. Now, I get it. There were a bunch of different stories told, but I think by and large, most of the stories, most of the testimony was against Kelly Ellard. Prosecutors intended to put her on trial a third time.
I wonder what the success ratio is when you go to your third trial. Like, does it benefit the defendant more or the prosecution more?
That's a great question. And I would have to think it would lean towards benefiting the defendant, because unless the prosecution has come up with new evidence.
Right.
They're putting on essentially the same case where the defense can try to offer up something different.
Sure. Yeah. Because they know what's coming.
Yeah. The jury didn't buy the first one. Maybe the second jury bought that one a little more because they were deadlocked. We'll lean into this part and we'll make this the focus of our defense. You know, even the smallest step forward can make a big difference in your financial future. When you open a Chime checking account, you're one step closer to a better financial future with no maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Making progress has never been easier. I think we've all been in that position where we've had an overdraft. Well, with Chime, you can overdraft up to $200 with no fees. That's amazing. And they have over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Make progress towards a better financial future with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/TCAT. That's chime.com/TCATT. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. MyPay eligibility requirements apply. Credit limits range from $20 to $500. $2 fee applies to get funds instantly. Crime checking account required. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details. True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, folks, therapy can feel like a big investment, but let's think about the state of your mind. It's just as important as your physical health. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp online therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. With BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and time. And you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. I've used the BetterHelp service for years, and I love the fact that, I can connect with a therapist in a comfortable spot in my home on my laptop. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/TCAT today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/TCATT. Several months later, in November 2004, Warren Glowatski was denied parole for the first time. And this is interesting, right? Kelly still hasn't even been convicted.
No, she's still going through trials.
And Warren's already been denied parole. This is how long it has taken, right? It's been 7 years since the murder. Kelly's third trial started on February 21st, 2005. Her defense questioned the statements from the other teens and Warren Glowatski. The defense argued that they didn't see anything and created a scene based on rumors that circulated around their school after Reena disappeared. At the third trial, a pathologist testified that Reena's brain was swollen and she suffered at least 18 forceful blows to her body. Her cause of death, though, was drowning. Reena's autopsy revealed that she had severe bruising over her entire skull, forehead, and cheeks, as well as her pelvis, stomach, liver, and pancreas. And I think it's just, highlights again how brutal this beating actually was that she suffered. On March 17th, Warren once again described how he and Kelly followed and attacked Reena as she tried to get away from the group of teens. He maintained his story that Kelly was the one who dragged Reena to the water and held her head under until she drowned. Other witnesses testified that in the days following her death, Kelly bragged about finishing off a girl and bragged that she broke Reena's arms and jumped on her neck. So there's not a lot that's going to be different, right? In this third trial, you're going to have a lot of the same people testifying. You're going to have a lot of the same testimony. The jury began deliberating on April 7th. On April 12th, 2005, Kelly was found guilty of second-degree murder for the second time. On July 7th, she was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 7 years. 2 more years than what she got the very first time.
Yeah.
But it would take over a decade after Reena's murder for Kelly's case to finish making its way through the Canadian legal system. On September 5th, 2008, the BC Court of Appeal overturned Kelly's conviction and ordered a 4th trial.
This is amazing.
And it's part of what, fascinates so many people about this case. Just Kelly's trial and her legal journey in particular. The court found that the judge presiding over Kelly's 3rd trial made a mistake in the handling of some witness testimony. The judge erred in his instructions to the jury over the testimony of Marissa Bowles, who said she witnessed the first attack and saw Reena walk across a bridge followed by Kelly and Warren. However, her testimony was inconsistent with her written statement given 10 days after the murder. In that statement, she didn't say she saw Reena cross the bridge. The court's decision was split 2-1, which triggered an automatic appeal to the Supreme Court. On January 12, 2009, the Supreme Court of Canada rejected the defense's bid to stop them from hearing the prosecution's appeal of the latest ruling. On June 12th of that year, the Supreme Court of Canada reinstated Kelly's second-degree murder conviction, which meant the 4th trial would never take place. I mean, you talk about a roller coaster. And, there's no sympathy, right, for Kelly here as a murderer, but it would still be a roller coaster.
Well, for sure, yeah. For the victim's family.
As well.
Yeah.
And even for, the girls who participated, who have to testify again and again. Again, much less sympathy for some of these people than for Reena's family, obviously.
Yeah.
They have the biggest roller coaster of emotions. Over the past decade, Warren and Kelly, who later changed her name to Carrie Sim, have made headlines for their efforts to be released from prison. Warren was granted day parole in 2007, and we've talked about this before. Day parole allows inmates to go out into the community and to return to prison at night. In some cases, prisoners are granted extended parole and can even spend some nights at home. Warren was granted full parole in June 2010. And I don't know how I feel about that. We've talked about it before. I think it happens much less frequently here in the U.S.
Sure.
It seems to happen a lot in Canada, where they kind of go into at some point this day parole, extended parole, and then ultimately into full parole.
It's kind of like baby stepping.
It is, but you have convicted murderers at the Stop and Shop, buying Reese cups next to you.
Yeah, but if they're going to be out eventually, maybe this is the best way to integrate them back into society.
You can make the argument. You can definitely make the argument. I'm not saying one's better than the other. Warren took rehabilitation courses in prison. In 2018, CBC reported that he was a mentor to young people at risk of getting involved in crime. Reena's parents, Suman and Manjeet Virk, met him several times in prison, and they actually even supported his bid for parole. They also attended his parole hearing in 2007 to show their support.
Well, I think that says a lot.
It says a lot about them as people, but it also says a lot about what they thought of him as far as his rehabilitation. They must have seen something to go to that length.
I think so.
Reena's family launched a campaign to bring awareness to teen violence and bullying in schools. Her parents traveled across the country to share Reena's story in an effort to prevent future tragedy.
Good for them.
Yeah, it must have been horrible, but to try to find something or make something good happen, I think that's a great way to honor her memory. In 2009, they were awarded the Anthony J. Holm Award of Distinction for their work. Kelly Ellard didn't show remorse for several years. She got into a lot of trouble in prison for breaking the rules, she waived her right to a parole hearing 4 times before she applied for day parole in May 2016. Her application was denied. Although she now accepted responsibility for the murder, the parole board found that she was minimizing many aspects of the offense per CBC.
So maybe not really taking responsibility.
Not taking full responsibility. Now, I didn't understand why someone would waive their right to a parole hearing. Maybe she was just so certain that they weren't going to let her out. Why go through with it? But to waive it 4 times, hell, go in there and give it a shot.
At least, yeah. What do you have to
lose?
Yeah.
But, here is something we see both in Canada and in the United States. Parole boards want to see you take responsibility. What they don't want to see is you take some responsibility, but minimize other part. And it sounds like, what she was doing. Kelly was denied day parole again in January 2017 because the parole board couldn't reach a consensus. Kelly told the court that since the birth of her child in the fall of 2016, she saw the world through different eyes. She believed she needed day parole so she could bond with her child and learn parenting skills. She was asked about the father, who is a federal offender.
Wait, how did she have a baby while she was in prison? I mean, I know how you have a baby. But
okay, because that's a whole different discussion. We don't have time to get into that. Well, the CBC reported that Kelly became pregnant during a private visit with her boyfriend while he was on day release. Canada allows private family visits, including conjugal visits, that can last up to 72 hours every 2 months if the offender is not at risk for family violence or under restrictions. Her boyfriend was rearrested for breaching parole.
Well, now we know.
I don't know about you, but a 72-hour conjugal visit, that's quite a long time.
That's a long time.
What do you think? You're going to need some bananas, maybe a few naps?
I'm thinking, at least a couple bottles of Gatorade.
Again, I think it just highlights, some of the differences. Again, we have conjugal visits here and in some places. Kelly told the parole board she had been incident-free for 18 months and had not used drugs since she failed a urine test in June 2015. I am really shocked, Gibbs, by the amount of drugs in prison.
Man, there's definitely a lot of drugs in there. But you would think if you're up on parole or want to get out soon, you'd want to have clear
hold
tests.
Off on doing drugs. Yeah. Kelly had another hearing on November 30th, 2017, where she was granted day parole. She admitted responsibility and said she was sorry. She said Reena did not deserve to die.
Kind of like stating the obvious.
Yeah. But this is, the thing that I'm never sure of. Is it that these individuals ultimately come to this conclusion, they believe it, or, and this is what I sometimes lean towards, is it more likely that they're just saying these things because they know it's what they have to say, they know it's what the parole board wants to hear?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a little manual on what do you have to do to get out of here? Here's the things you need to say or do at the time of your parole that your attorney probably hands to you.
And I'm sure some people do kind of change their way of thinking and really do take responsibility and are remorseful, but I don't know what the percentage is.
Yeah. I've listened to some parole hearings, and it does amaze me how some of the parolees, or wanting to be a parolee, how they don't take responsibility or how they make it all about them.
Yeah. Because that's the type of individual they are. It's what got them probably in trouble in the first place. And they can't change. They can't get out of it. Reena's mother said it was too late and added, as quoted by CBC, she could have taken responsibility a long time ago and saved us the pain and agony of going through 3 different trials and waiting for 20 years to finally have some acknowledgement of her guilt. And that's absolutely true.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, Kelly Ellard doesn't give a rat's ass
No.
about this family. She didn't care about Reena, or she wouldn't have done any of the things that she did.
Yeah, and she didn't care through all the trial periods while she was in jail.
Reena's mother died on June 17th, 2018 in a tragic accident. According to the family's announcement, she was 58 years old. The Crime Wire later reported that she died after she choked on her food at a cafe.
Oh, that's terrible.
That is a really tragic accident. You know, you would think when you hear that, car crash or, something along those lines,
Right.
like a really bad slip and fall, but choking to death at a restaurant, that's horrible.
You ever choked on something when no one was around?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty good at chewing up my food. I don't think I've ever done that. Now I've gotten choked up, but never to the point where I needed someone to intervene and like do the Heimlich or anything like that.
Where you're throwing yourself into the corner of the counter?
No, I've never had that. You?
Maybe.
Okay. Kelly was granted extended day parole, which allows overnight leave in August 2019. And Gibbs, she was still only 37 years old at this point. According to the 2019 parole board decision, Kelly remained defiant for years following the murder, and it took her a long time to express remorse. Her last psychological assessment in 2016 points to a moderate to high moderate risk of future violence over the longer term.
That's not good.
No. But yet, she's still on like day parole, which includes overnight leave. Her behavior in prison was called problematic at times, but her last incidents of violence occurred in 2009, and she had shown some stability and progress. So I guess that's what it was based on, right? She doesn't have what you would call a great long-term indicator, but she did show some progress. So she was granted extended day parole, but Kelly's parole was revoked in August 2021 for drug and alcohol use and indications of violence with the father of her children. She had her second child in 2020. But then just 2 months later, her day parole was reinstated with restrictions. It was extended again in 2022 and continued for another 6 months in May 2023. The parole board found that she had made some progress in her reintegration, but there is concern that when she's dealing with multiple stressors, it can result in poor decision making. I almost think that's an understatement.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I feel like they've given her some shots at this thing and it hasn't worked out well, but they keep giving them to her.
Part of her rehabilitation should be, how to deal with stress levels.
Well, and I'm sure there are classes or something in prison, but what happens when you leave? I often think sometimes people don't get in trouble in prison because it's structured, and in some prisons it's pretty locked down. But once you're out, how do you deal with the freedom?
Yeah.
And the stressors that are going to come up on a day-to-day basis? And if you can't deal with them, well, you're probably going to end up back in prison. As we wrap this one up, I can't help but replaying what this beating and murder must have been like for Reena. It's a very sad story. There's no doubt about that. The murder of Reena Virk still sparks important conversations about bullying and teen violence. Although her family suffered a tragic loss and had to go through multiple trials to see her killer convicted, they chose to help others by talking about these issues with young people in schools across the country. Her father said in a 2017 interview with CBC, there's a new generation, and if they're not taught now that bullying is not okay, they will grow up to be adults and carry on this practice. None of us want that kind of society. We can see the results even now by our talking to school kids. They reflect, they write back to us, and they thank us for reminding them that bullying is a bigger problem than it appears. Nobody wants these kinds of things to happen. And that really gives us courage and confidence that we're on the right path. And I think you said it earlier, but to me, that is amazing to try to make something good out of this tragedy. Reena's mom is deceased now, but both of them, and her father continues it. How many lives have they touched?
Yeah.
How many lives have they changed? How many people have they saved from either being a bully and getting in trouble or being the victim of bullying? Now, you're not going to reach everybody.
No.
But you only need to reach a percentage, right, to make a difference. And they are making a difference. I don't know what happened to Reena under that bridge, and then later on, across the bridge into the water. Absolutely horrible. And, I do go back to this kind of group thing. Well, everyone's doing it. So I'm here. I'm going to join in.
I'm going to do a little bit of it too.
It's not as hard for me to understand as maybe the pre-planning that we talk about in some cases where 2, 3, 4, 5 people get together and they talk about what they're going to do.
Right.
This would have been more of a spur of the moment thing. I'm not saying it's any better, but you would have wanted for some of these girls and for Warren as well to step in, stop it, walk away if they felt like they couldn't stop it.
Right.
But to join in after, someone's already on the ground and kick them as well. And it's just how do you live with yourself?
Yeah, I don't know. At a minimum, you should be walking away. I also think if you felt like you could, you try to stop it. If not, you have cell phones. I know everybody has cell phones at this time.
Yeah, we're talking, this is 2017. This is not 1985.
So why aren't you dialing up somebody, getting some help over there? Why couldn't you do that?
Because again, what we see time and time again is nobody wants to make that move because they're afraid they're going to be ostracized or kicked out of the friend group. Because, at 15 years old, that's what you're worried about.
Yeah.
You're worried about who you're friends with and your clique and your circle. Now, when you get to be our age and you look back on it, it's very easy to say, what are you doing?
Right.
Don't care about that because you're with the wrong people anyway. It's not that easy when you're in the moment at 15 years old. I'm not saying I would have done it, but I'm sure at 15, I did some things that I probably shouldn't have done.
Oh, I think we all can say that.
Based on peer pressure or, other people wanting to fit in with other people. Now, it wasn't beating on someone after they were down.
Right.
I wouldn't have done that. Yeah, I just think it takes a courage that most people that age, I guess, probably don't possess to make a phone call or to jump in the middle and say, this is wrong. Stop it. Or you're going to have to deal with me. Most people that age don't have the courage to do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But that's it for our episode on Kelly Ellard and Warren Glowatski and the murder of Reena Virk. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. It's Sally from the United Kingdom, Sidcup to be exact. Thank you for making my life better. I found out your podcast through lockdown, and that really helped me. So I binge listened quite a lot, and I'm a really big fan. Have you ever thought about coming to CrimeCon UK? I'm a constant visitor there. It'd be really good to see you there. I'm sure you've got a lot of UK fans that want to see you. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, and keep your own time ticking.
Yeah, thank you so much for the voicemail. We have thought about going to UK CrimeCon. There was some kind of conflict last year. I can't remember what it was. And then...
Well, they wouldn't let us get on the Concorde.
Well, that's what it was. The Concorde doesn't fly anymore, right?
No, I do not.
No, you didn't. I don't think they fly the Concorde anymore. So that's one of the reasons why they wouldn't let us on.
Now it explains it. Okay.
I could be wrong, but there's some part of me that thinks I think
you're probably right.
It just doesn't run anymore for whatever reason. But it's probably too expensive to operate. But I would love to go. I've never been to Europe, ever in my entire life. My wife has, and she wants to go back, so I know she'd go with me. We might take you.
It'd be fun.
It would be fun.
Yeah.
Get some fish and chips.
Or chips and fish.
See Big Ben, Parliament, round and round.
All that other stuff in between.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll have to put that on the agenda.
Hi, my name is Summer. I'm from Warren, so not too far from you guys. But I just listened to the episode where you were talking about the ass man and Gibby knowing the Mean Girls reference, and I just started cracking up. That was so funny. I've been listening to you guys since about the pandemic started, and I just love you guys so much. Thank you.
Oh, how nice. And appreciate that voicemail very much. I am always surprised by Gibby. The things that he should know but doesn't know, and then the things that I think he'll never know and then somehow does.
I'm shocked by it too.
The whole thing is shocking. You are shocking.
Yeah. Sometimes I just reflect and think, huh. That's all I say. Huh.
All right. We had one thing in the mailbag, but it was a lot. Danielle Pruitt sent us a huge box of goodies. I mean, I'm talking tons of candy, some coffee, but a whole bunch of candy making supplies.
Yeah. I see it all right here.
My youngest is going to be amazed because she loves to bake. She loves to make candy, stuff like that. So it's a big box of stuff. So thank you, Danielle, very much.
Appreciate that.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
How much is an hour of your time worth? Whether you're a realtor, lawyer, accountant, or even a content creator, Stamps.com gives you the ability to focus your time on what you do best, not on tedious mailing and shipping tasks. Print stamps, shipping labels, or certified mail forms in seconds. More than 4 million customers have relied on Stamps.com to make their lives easier. Go to Stamps.com/audio for a special offer. No contract, cancel anytime. That's Stamps.com/audio.